Welcome to Scorched Earth, and a look ahead at the, as much as I'm permitting myself to do at this point, at least anyway, at the thread of Gemini season. See what it's all about and what the backdrop is for each of us. This video is meant to be a companion to your signs monthly reading as well, so it might be well, the intention is that you would watch this first and then you will see how it kind of resolves down into your signs energies. So I'm using the Hexen 2 here actually because I took the Hexen 5 off with me when I travelled to Glasgow a couple of weeks ago, and I keep forgetting to dig it out. It's in a bag somewhere, and I haven't found it yet. So the Hexen 2 is still on the table, so we're going to use the Hexen 2. And I hope you're well. I forgot to ask. I hope everything is proceeding as well as could be expected during 2026 for you. So, with all of that said, and with this deck shuffled a little bit more, let's flip the camera around here. And we're doing nothing more than kind of feeling into the backdrop energy of the moment, really. And I've already thought about the theme that I intend to read for on the monthly readings, informed, as a lot of things are at the moment, by my participation in the Deccan Walk. And Gemini season is actually represented by the 8, 9 and 10 of Swords in the tarot. And although some people find those to be problematic cards, I think they're actually three of the most useful cards that exist within the tarot anyway. I have a particular take on so-called negative cards. I don't really agree that that's what they are. But nevertheless, I don't know. I think a lot of internal paradigms are going to change over this period. So I'm curious to see what the backdrop energy is. And I think I've probably done enough of that kind of shuffling. So what we're going to do is now shuffle 5 times. 5, 4, 3, 2 and 1. And let's have a little look and see what the background energies of this period are. We have the Queen of Pentacles, that's Capricorn energy. We have the 10 of Cups, Pisces, and we have the 2 of Wands. That's very interesting. Shall we keep pulling? I think maybe we might. We also have the Ace of Pentacles, glorious. I love that. We have the 4 of Cups and Judgment. I love this Judgment card. I'll be honest, I really do. And the Magician at the bottom of the deck, how utterly pertinent, because the Magician represents the planet Mercury, actually, and so as a result represents both the energies of Virgo but also Gemini. So if we sit with this Magician for a moment, what we have is an opportunity to begin to gather the aces in whatever place they are currently residing, wherever our attention is on them, and start weaving them together to create. I mean, the Magician is an act of creation. Now, we've got to be careful, because the Magician is not, as indeed is true across all of the tarot cards, uniformly positive. Even the most positive looking cards have a downside, and the most negative cards have an upside. And the same is true with the Magician, in so much as what he deals with fundamentally is the manipulation of reality. Now, we talk about this in rather positive terms because it is about, active creation, active manifestation. It's like what we are doing to create something new. But in other senses, it can function as a warning that perhaps things are being manipulated and you're not quite getting the whole story. I have to say that one of my most hated pairings is the Magician and the Knight of Cups together, because that feels to me like somebody who will say anything to reel somebody in, and that there is no ethical position behind that at all. It's like the Magician wants what he wants, and he's going to say whatever he needs to. He's going to pull on your heartstrings in the right way to get that thing for you. Obviously, Depends on the context of the cards around it, but there are certain pairings that you see together could quite often make you a little uncomfortable, and that would definitely be one of them. So, as with all things, we need to kind of hold lightly the way that this may express itself, and maybe one particular expression could beget another, in so much as when you become aware of how things may be being manipulated around you, it can give you the resolve to start to create in a different direction that pulls you away from the kind of manipulation that we're talking about here, whether it comes through social media and algorithms or media or any kind of official, declaration about anything. I would draw your attention to the t-shirt that I'm wearing here today, which I think sums up my my approach quite nicely. Anyhow, let's have a look at what we've got here. What I do like about this is that we have effectively an ending and a transition point to a beginning. Now, how this plays out is going to depend very much on your particular context, what you're aware of, what you're not aware of, all that kind of thing, right? The Ten of Cups is one of those cards that people really love to see in a reading, and I always side-eye it a little bit, in so much as it represents for a lot of people the happily ever after. And maybe it might be my slightly Saturnian sunglasses that I have on all of the time, but I don't really think that there is a happily ever after, because there's a kind of stasis with that kind of position that does not take into account the only thing that is consistent in the universe, which is that everything changes, right? So the rather static and vague happily ever after doesn't really work for me in terms of the way that I read the cards, right? Because it just doesn't take into account these fundamental principles of the universe. So we've got this Ten of Cups here, and for me then that says we have an ending of some sort here. It is emotional because it is the cups, right? But actually water is the proper representation of emotion in the tarot. The cups are simply the receptacle for it. And if we think about it in those terms, then what we've got is are perhaps receptacles that can no longer hold the emotion, which is the water in the tarot, and that this represents the change. There is something dynamic happening here whereby the Ten of Cups can't contain what comes next. And the Ten of Cups more broadly can speak to family, it can talk to community, it can talk to the people around you in a very real geographical sense, or it can be quite significantly bigger than that. It could be your community in terms of the town or the village or the city that you live in, but we can be talking everything up to like nation states and humanity as a whole, right? So there's the whole gamut that we can run on this Ten of Cups here. But again, let's focus on this idea that something about any one of those positions is changing here. Now, one of the things that I've noticed coming up quite a lot in the weekly energy readings that I do for people on Circle is this idea of community, right? It's been coming up again and again and again. Community as a resource, as a kind of cyclical, giving and receiving thing. I've spoken quite a lot about the potential for magic that is very, very close to the surface now, in a way that I find really quite intriguing. At the same time, I guess this makes a lot of sense because everything is chaotic and everything is breaking down. And so what we have when chaos is all around is potential, right? Everything is reducing down to its potentialized state, and we get to choose what flows here from. It's not about passively absorbing or passively witnessing to some extent what is going on around you and waiting for the next person to come along and create order. It's like, no, this is all collapsing down, and now what kind of order do you want to see created? You see how the Ace of Pentacles and the Magician would work really nicely here together. So we could start to see more wholesale shifts in participation in particular kind of communities. I mean, when we're talking about the Ten of Cups, we could quite literally be talking about online communities as well. So, if you found yourself ping-ponging around in an echo chamber of people who hold exactly the same views as you, and for a while that was emotionally supportive, but now you're starting to see where it was restrictive, then this Ten of Cups and Ace of Pentacles could represent where there's a kind of pulling away from that inner desire to start participating in something that feels a little bit more expansive than what by definition ends up being quite restrictive when it's a 10. Now, if you combine this again, like I was talking about with the Deccan Walk and the 8, 9 and 10 of Swords that represent Gemini season, then I think it's quite fascinating, because it tallies in really well with how I see the 8, 9 and 10 of Swords, which is essentially that lurch towards cognitive crisis when we realise that something about our paradigm, something about the way that we interpret reality actually has reached its limit, and we too have reached the limits of our cognition, and we have to start tackling our own belief systems. We have to start challenging them, and we have to start seeing if they actually hold up to scrutiny. I think this backdrop is going to involve quite a lot of that. And by definition, if we've got people challenging their paradigms and finding that they're not actually standing up to scrutiny at all, then they're like, what the fuck am I doing here, right? Because observation is processing. Once you see the thing, everything changes. And what I love about the cards that have come out on the table here is that the Two of Wands is functioning like a gateway. It's giving you some options. It is not simply that things are breaking down and, oh fuck, what am I going to do about that? It's like, no, things are breaking down, and now you get to choose. Two of Wands and the Magician. You get to choose your own adventure. You get to choose which way this goes next. And fundamentally, a lot of this hinges on the presence of the Queen of Pentacles. She's here, she's representing Capricorn, to some extent she's representing Saturn as well, so there is some kind of structure there. But the Queen of Pentacles, for me, as all the queens do, help us try and work out, how, what we think, what we feel, what we value. Queen of Pentacles particularly is up there in terms of what she values. And things like value systems, the value of our own belief structures, these kind of things. So the queens are all about assessing the internal subjective value of something, to me at least anyway. And then by the time you get to the king is riffing off the information that the Queen has given him in terms of, what we value, why we're doing these things, what we're investing in. And then the king will action that, because we have, the feminine passive expression of the energy, which is here in the Queen of Pentacles, and the king correspondingly would be the active masculine expression. So that's where we do something with it. These two energies work in tandem with each other. We cannot have one over the other, because where there is all action, or we have the rigid order, right? You see it in the kings, and you see the ultimate expression of that in the emperor, right? He creates order, he creates structure. To some extent also he creates things like hierarchy and things like that, right? Well, on the other side of the spectrum, the feminine energy is the chaotic. It's the thing that kind of spreads around and feels about and processes all of this. And the quality of the information that the Queen can give to the king dictates on what comes next, what he does next, and what and how good that is. If the Queen's dealing with corrupted information, then what she passes on to the king is going to be no good, and all the decisions and all the actions that come thereafter will be similarly compromised. So the fact that we're starting off with the Queen of Pentacles has got this really strong basis of, what is my structure? What do I believe? What do I value? What do I want to invest in? What have I been investing in? And does it stand up to scrutiny? Have I, it's almost like that Ten of Cups there. I mean, I know it's supposed to represent a chalice sort of shape, right? But it feels like it's coming down to a point where it's impossible for us not to look at these things within ourselves, but also within the communities that surround us. Like, are these people who share our values? Do I share the values of the people that I am around, the community that I am around, whether it's online or whether it's, in real life? There are lots of different ways in which we can take this, but the Queen is that essential analysis and assessment point. Now I'm going to pull out this 777 deck that I've got here because I just fucking love it so much, and it's I want to bring some stuff in here. Tell me about this Queen of Pentacles, please. Okay, so we have the Sun, and interestingly the Sun is showing up on its side. And we also have the Queen of Pentacles again, right? I said what I fucking said. And interestingly, we have more structure with the Ten of Pentacles at the bottom of the deck right there. In addition to the Ten of Cups, I mean, these both have the qualities about them of the happily ever after. But again, they also have the qualities of, guess what, everything's changing. And whatever structure has been put in place is going to, by definition, going to have to change, because nothing can stay still forever. It's not how anything works down here on this plane. So now we have a double Queen of Pentacles, and we are really doubling down on the ideas of everything that I was talking about there, in terms of, and even down to, what the fuck do I stand for? One might ask also if there is representation of an embodiment of those principles either, or whether you're kind of going against your own core principles in terms of what you are participating in. Now, the Sun card is a really interesting one because, at its first pass, it represents Leo, so it represents things like play and fun and joy and the kind of eternal summer, right? But it's knocked on its side here. And so rather than simply the expression of a feeling of the sun being on your skin and the joy that brings to us, just sitting in that space, what we've got is it real though? Or have I been walking around like a child, not fully embodying, not fully investing, not fully thinking about things, or overly investing? It's really interesting. I was listening to a video by Mark Manson this morning. Now, I fucking love Mark Manson. He wrote the subtle art of not giving a fuck, which obviously caught my attention immediately. Like, hello, there's a kindred spirit here. And he was discussing this internet theory that everybody is 12. And it's interesting because it's kind of psychological, but it's also in so much as we recognise there are points, where trauma happens, that we essentially kind of shell up around ourselves as we are at that point. And so there is a bit of us that just remains at the age that we were when the trauma happened, right? And when you get triggered and things like that, it's that part of you resurfacing. But it's also a curiously modern phenomena in terms of the internet and social interactions on the internet, where and he actually goes into some really quite good detail about this, but it's about the development of the neocortex and whatnot, but showing how, certainly on social media and whatnot, it is the 12-year-old responses that garner the most attention, and by extension then the kind of kudos of that comes with attention. And now we've got a kind of race to the bottom going on, where everybody is defaulting to the mean, which is to say they're in a 12-year-old, and things like wisdom and knowledge and even levels of concentration such that you could sit through a long form video like mine rather than consuming 200 shorts a day, is now considered to be like boomer shit. It's like everything's been repackaged and given the same names but not meaning the same things anymore. The things like justice, in its truest sense, being a very, very shallow and vacuous facsimile of that, when we've got things like cancel culture going on and that sort of thing. It's antithetical to any kind of personal expansion that comes from exposure to new ideas. That's my opinion. And feel free to cancel me for it if you want. I shall remain completely oblivious. Anywho, the sun for me, as the one true luminary in the sky, represents the light of consciousness, right? So it's here, and that's a really, really good thing. It means we're really engaging with the idea of what is valuable, what we should be investing in. Is what we've been doing so far correct, or is there some sort of adjustment that is almost certainly required? I mean, look at these 4 cards here. But it's on its side, which makes me feel that most people, when investigating some aspects of this within themselves, and then by extension as they relate to the communities around them, are going to start to find that there are problems. There are ways in which it hasn't functioned quite the way that they thought it was. They may have, strapped themselves to a certain level of idealism about something at the expense of what the facts of the matter actually say. To go back to that Mark Manson video that I was watching this morning, there seems to be at the moment this idea that being triggered gives you some kind of card that you get to play over a situation. I don't see a lot of indication that people recognizing that triggers are their responsibility to work out, right? And although the energy of this year is deeply individual, it's kind of like the whole point of this is so that we can begin to move as one, to come together, to recognize the oneness that is permeating everything, right? The illusion of separation being exactly that, an illusion. So that we can move as one, we can navigate through this this consciousness shift that's going on right now. But also so that we can have meaningful relationships with each other. Again, like I have to say, like that throughout Taurus season, the message that was coming through for me, loud and clear, and it was replicated not only in my readings but also in the experiences that I had, was situating people as so very important for what happens next. Because it's not like we're going to get to the 31st of December and all of the chaos of 2026 then just shuts off and we go back to normal. The whole point of 2026 is that whatever you thought was normal, it's gone. It's not there anymore. And if you are feeling the discomfort, and there is much discomfort of the moment, of the tension, of the friction, of the confrontation of some of the things that are starting to come up here, there and everywhere, then you're in the right place. This is exactly what this year is about. But 2027, although dealing with slightly different things, I think is going to possibly be more intense than this year. That's my take on it, at least anyway. So it's not that the sun is reversed. It's not that everything we believed was ass backwards. It's that there are quite a few things that need to that don't stand up to scrutiny. And Gemini season is going to want to investigate all of that. Now, the issue then comes with, you can't just investigate it, see the evidence of what you have thought being somewhat sideways of what the truth might actually turn out to be, and then not do anything with it. You have to anchor that into your new reality. There has to be a processing moment, right? And I think that we do see that here in the double tens. Definitely things are going to change. There's no doubt about that. But like I said, it's not like this change is thrust upon you. I feel like with the presence of the Two of Wands, quite literally, as the card suggests, we have a choice. We get to decide which way we're going. We get to choose our own adventure. Again, the Magician is really doubling down on that kind of energy there. So I don't think that we should expect that we get presented by the universe with, opportunities to go off in a new direction. That's not really what the cards are suggesting here. We've got a wrapping up of energies with the Ten of Pentacles and the Ten of Cups, but the Two of Wands and the choices that that flow therefrom, right? The opportunities to go off in different directions are subject to your attention. They're subject to your investment. I don't think it's any accident that we have the Queen of Pentacles showing up twice and then the Ace of Pentacles here. It's like, if you want to grow something new, if you want to experience something new, if you want to experience something that is more fulfilling and actually, fulfills the role of what it was that you were looking for, then you have to consciously invest in it at this point. I think the time of being able to passively absorb things, whether it's on the TV or whether it's, from a YouTube video while you're doing something else, and assume that simply because you are aware of things, you are to some extent fulfilling the criteria, right? So I have knowledge of this. This is fine. It's like, can you put your money where your mouth is? Are you actually going to do something with that information now? Because it is insufficient that it stays in your head. It actually has to have some sort of external expression. Because the Ace of Pentacles, like all things, like all the aces, is a seed. And we might consider that everything that has run up to this point has had the quality of, we're digging the garden over. Right? Or if you're doing no dig, you're putting down your cardboard and your compost and then your straw and all that kind of thing. You're layering it all up. The point is, it's the preparatory stage. And the preparatory stage is all just about making sure that everything in the environment supports the seed. A seed which is going to have to, by definition, destroy itself in order to reach its potential. Now, the best way that I know of in my 45, almost 46 years of being on this planet, of creating better environments for our seeds to grow, always involves challenging my perceptions about things. I do thought experiments with myself all the time, the most basic of which is, what if that wasn't true though? What if it was in fact the opposite? I get into arguments with my son quite often, very good-natured arguments, right? But we will play devil's advocate at each other, and then we'll accidentally, trip across something that one of us actually believes quite passionately. And he's a Leo, right? So it gets quite loud. Two Leos having a very passionate conversation about things. And the one thing that always stops him dead in his tracks, and I think it's really, really, really useful question to ask yourself and other people, is what would it take to change your mind? And what I found was, not just with my son, but with lots of people as well, right? If they can't come up with an answer, if they say something like, nothing would change my mind, then that's not somebody who's dealing with facts and looking at a situation objectively and clearly. That is someone who has an emotional investment in things being the way that they are. They refuse to change their mind because there is that emotional root there. And so I think we should expect that questions of this nature are going to keep coming up for us, and they should keep coming up, because we're challenging what we think, we're challenging our belief system. Everything here is in place to say, if you want to make a kind of turn whereby you're living in a state of truth rather than a state of emotionally informed untruths, I guess, but certainly a distorted view of reality, which is, entirely possible, what with Neptune being so active at the moment. But also this clusterfuck of information that is just everywhere, as well as to the extent that you can cherry pick what you want to believe, and there will be supporting evidence for it. And then you don't have to think about it beyond that. Then the emotional stuff can just take over, and you can, loudly proclaim your support for, you know, the thing, whatever the thing may be for you. Let's have a look at this Two of Wands. Wir haben, ooh, interesting. We have the Knight of Pentacles. The fucking Two of Wands again. Really interesting. And the Page of Wands. Huh. Now, that's really interesting. And it's really interesting not just because the Two of Wands has come out again, right? So it's really doubling down on this message that we've got here, that there needs to be a conscious decision-making process here. But the rather obvious route out that we would expect would be the Page of Wands, right? It's like, okay, I'm getting ready to prepare for a new journey. I'm going to prepare to do things differently. But it's showing up reversed. And because the Page of Wands has a whole significant side to him that is about the preparation. And then when we get to the Knight of Wands, we're about the movement, right? Now we are actually moving. And then we get to the Queen of Wands and all the self-examination that comes with that. And then the King actioning something. I don't think that we can prepare exactly for the end result because we're not entirely sure what that is. I mean, the Eight of Pentacles at the bottom of the deck is saying this is where there's some really hard work that needs to be put in. And we'll notice that it is yet again Pentacles. It's about hard work, it's about discipline, it's about the investment of time and care and effort and energy generally. Like, what are you putting your attention into? And then the Knight of Pentacles, which represents Virgo energy and is where the South Node is right now, is showing up in the upright. Now, I'll confess, when I saw those two cards come out like that, and sometimes this is a thing that happens when you have the Two of Wands coming up in between two cards, quite often it's representing the binary of, well, you pick that one or you pick this one. And knowing that the South Node is in Virgo at the moment, right, it would seem kind of obvious that whatever Virgo represented was probably something that we were leaving behind, right? Because the South Node is that balancing, but it's definitely a balancing towards, you know, in order that we may expansively move towards whatever the North Node is pulling us towards. We're making space by sloughing off old things that we don't need anymore. I wasn't expecting a reversed page, but here's what's quite interesting about it. Because the page is reversed and because we're not entirely sure where we're going, so the page can't really prepare in any meaningful way. Plus, we don't get then the drama of the fire suit showing up, the fire court hierarchy, right? Because look at them, so handsome, so fiery, so vibrant, so filled with life, right? We love a bit of fire. The binary that's in front of us, this thing or the other, is actually favouring the Knight of Pentacles. Which means we're not springing off in some fancy new direction where we can go experience a shitload of new things or plan for the experience of lots of new things. The Knight of Pentacles and the Eight of Pentacles are bringing the same message to bear, which is slow, steady, methodical movement, and not necessarily too much of a deviation away from the way that we have done things, right? Because sometimes the new information isn't all that helpful, and old information just needs a new set of eyes looking at it, to hone it, to refine it, to balance it. You know, we talked a lot about the Queen representing the value, and the value of our investment, the value of our investment, if I can put it like that, right? what we stand for, our core principles, our core values, to what extent are we embodying them, all that kind of thing. And then we're getting Eight of Pentacles, Knight of Pentacles. It's like the work here is in what you stand for, what you think is important. We're not looking to pivot away. We're looking to get really, really discerning, because you've got all of this pentacle supportive energy here, and it culminates there in the Ace of Pentacles. All of this is the preparatory work, not for a new journey, but to clear the ground for an ace that is right here, that is comprised of, just as we see here in these core hierarchies and what this guy is working on here, a real refined sense of what we stand for. To some extent, perhaps a really refined sense of the value of our own attention. And whether that is being harvested away from us by, perhaps, the paradigm that we're in, the people who are around us. I said in the How to Thrive Through 2026, I made reference to the point that if you are not in a place where you can articulate what you stand for without fearing being set upon by your peers, then you were in the wrong room. Because nothing about that pushes humanity forward, it regresses humanity. And then we circle back to Mark Manson's video, We Are All 12, right? It's not about the development of new principles, new values, new, core values. It's about picking up the ones that you already have and polishing those off and going, okay, are these in the right place? Are these aligned with the communities and the people that I am around, or not? To some extent then, the Page of Pentacles is not the great big dramatic flounce off that you would expect from a fire sign. It's kind of like doubling down your effort on making sure that you are embodying what what you consider to be important. And this is where the Ace of Pentacles comes in, because now you have cleared a space for you to be able to invest your attention in what feels principally, which is to say of principle, important to you. And this Four of Cups is interesting because it is... The Ten of Cups is a card that can actually represent great suffering. And the suffering isn't necessarily in the energy of the card itself. The suffering is in the resistance to the energy in the card, which is, we're completing, we're at the end, the dynamic is going to change now. Like, where we can allow that to happen, where we can actually work with that and let that happen, then we create space. Where we resist it, though, is where we start coming up against the suffering. We start coming up against feelings of loneliness. We start to come up against feelings of emptiness. It's like, I'm trying so hard to keep this thing still because I need it and it supports me, and yet, why does it make me feel so bad? Now, the Four of Cups can also represent rejection and abandonment. It can represent sometimes abandoning, full stop, right? As in you doing the abandoning or you doing the rejecting. It is a card of foundations. And what we're seeing here is people really leaning into their foundations. But I think that you should expect that this is not necessarily going to be a comfortable transition. Let's have a look here. Four of Cups. Well, Ten of Cups reversed. Interesting. And we've got another one that's just fallen on the floor, face down. What are you? Oh boy. It was the Tower reversed. So you're all familiar with the concept of a trauma bond, right? You have two people who meet and, quite literally bond because of their trauma. Now, that can either be shared trauma that they both experienced at the same time, or it can be when you meet someone who is also in the same, bucket of shit that you're in because you've both had something really, really awful happen to you, right? You bond over that. It becomes you two against the world. It's a well-known phenomenon. But what happens over time is that, and it's rarely the two people together, or whatever the group is, actually. It's very rarely the group or the two people or whatever evolving together. What you'll have is one person who starts to work very seriously on themselves and they begin to heal. Now, you would think that this would be an excellent thing and something that would encourage the other person or persons involved to also really lean into that same work. But what you actually get is this interesting phenomenon where those choosing not to heal resent the people who are healing and they try and pull them back down. Why? Because their bond is through trauma, and if you remove the trauma, or if you remove the sensation of trauma in your body, then that bond starts to break down. And if it's not replaced with something else, a new shared interest, a new way of seeing the world that aligns together, then these two people are going to peel apart. And so what you end up with is guilt and a bit of shame on the side of the person who's healing. And on the other side, you get someone who is trying everything within their fucking power to stop this person leaving. And sometimes they succeed. Right? Misery loves company. We want to keep everybody where they are. But sometimes they don't succeed. And then what you get is a kind of rage and resentment on the side of this person or persons over here that then begin to attack the person who is healed. Now, I'm not going to draw attention to any particular thing, but I would say that there are myriad examples of this that are happening in modern society right now. Right? You take any one of a number of ideologies, and you see what happens when people start to move away from them. This person, people round on and attack this one. It's become a whole fucking process now. Maybe part of what's shifting here for you at the moment is a recognition that you might have participated in at least this side of the trauma bond, right? It's like your ideology became your worldview, and then anybody who didn't subscribe to that became automatically the enemy. Because the Tower in reverse and the Ten of Cups in reverse is a very honest and very strident attempt. And I say honest as in earnest is probably the better word. To resist what is changing. The Ten of Cups is an absolute rejection of the idea that the dynamic will ever change within the group. The Tower reversed is even worse. Total rejection. No, it's not going to happen. Fingers and ears, la la la. We are all 12, right? And yet, we have the Nine of Pentacles here, a card of self-sufficiency, a card of being resourceful, but also a card of how you manage your resources to maintain your independence, your self-sufficiency, your sovereignty somewhat. And you notice that it follows on from the 8. We've got a really clear consecutive movement. 8, 9 and 10, because we've seen the 10 of Pentacles, where we are moving through what effectively amounts to a kind of divorce from our belief structures and all the people that have been associated with those, as we kind of branch out into something that is more individually felt. The problem is that you're going to come up against resistance. Now, in the worst case scenario, with all the love in the world, you might be the resistance. And that's not the right place for you to be. That's not a great place for you to be. That's not an expanded consciousness. That is somebody who is doubling down on what is trying to change. They're trying to resist the change. But I think it's probably more likely that if you are following me and you are listening to my readings, that you are actually going to be on the receiving end of this. And I think that part of the discomfort of Gemini season is going to be dealing with that from people that you thought were supportive around you. And to some extent, it's a test of character. Can you maintain? Can you hold? What your deep work on yourself has revealed. Can you put your money where your mouth is? Can you lead with your integrity? Can you lead with your principles? Or will you be sucked back into by this? I love the Judgment card because it is about making decisions, right? It's quite literally about your judgment, but there's something bigger there. Because it is the card that comes before the world, and the world is the graduation point. The world's like, oh, everything's changed. We've completed the lessons on this level, and now we can progress to the next level, right? It's a full closure of a cycle. But the Judgment card is, can you hold your ethics? Can you hold your principles? Can you hold your core values when they are under attack? Or will you relinquish them in the face of challenge by your peers, by your community, whoever, because of a desire to fit in rather than be real and true and sovereign and autonomous? This is the essence of Gemini season right here. Because the judgment of other people will keep you small if you internalize it and you agree with it. And generally speaking, if you internalize it, it's because some part of you agrees with it. But if you do the work methodically and meticulously through this season, I'm inclined to think that, like I said, like once seen, it can't be unseen. And so everybody starts to walk a path that is different to the one that they've walked up until this point. It's not flashy, it's not dramatic, it's not full of exciting new novel experiences, but it is a consolidation of, a refinement of what truly is important within oneself, and then an embodiment of that. Just like we see with the Knight of Pentacles. And it doesn't become about who shouts the loudest or who makes the most, emotionally impassioned speech about something. It's like, what is really real? And can I lead with that? Even though it may bring about the ire of the people around me. It takes a strong character to withstand that kind of storm. It takes a strong character, actually, just in the first instance, to be able to challenge their own belief systems. The ego will do everything in its fucking power to make sure that you never do that, because the ego doesn't like being wrong. Generally speaking, the ego wants you to be the hero in your own story, and in order to do that, it's decided that you have to be right. And anything that challenges that paradigm, as far as your ego is concerned, is going to lead to death. In the same way that the ego quite often will tell you that you have to be accepted by the group, or that will lead to death. All of this is kind of stemming from childhood. When we didn't have the strength to make our own way, where we needed the protection of the family unit around us. Excuse me a minute, my doggy doorbell is ringing. I have to go see who's there. Thank you for your patience. That was indeed my postie delivering some books I bought on Amazon like 6 months ago. It's taken that long to get here. Anywho, while I was walking back up from my gate, a thought occurred to me. And the thought is that Gemini season looks like it has all the hallmarks of the activation of the hero's journey. Now, we talk in the tarot a lot about the fool's journey, right? And it's that progression from a state of naivete and innocence and, inexperience to the point of wisdom, which is achieved at the World card. And we can see that process is definitely unfolding here over Gemini season, right? But why? Anybody who tells you that all the major astrology of 2026 was over by April 21st is lying to you. Because although some of it may not be quite as dramatic as we saw in April, there is no release of tension. It just keeps stepping up and stepping up and stepping up. And having all the wisdom is all very well and good, but this is a Mars year. Like, Mars is doing a lot of the heavy lifting this year, and it is the interactions between Mars and the other planets that is stepping up the intensity. Now, Mars isn't that concerned with wisdom exactly, although, we recognise that there is a higher version of Mars that would be, but can we really say that we're seeing much of that out in the world at the moment? Right, the higher expression of Mars would take no issue with confronting evil in all of its forms. It wouldn't fight for the sake of it. It would be discerning, right? And it's the wisdom that marks out a good warrior. The warlords, not warlords really, but like the generals who lead armies, great strategists, the likes of Sun Tzu, right? These weren't hacking and chopping and slaying for the sake of it. Like, they were being strategic. It's one of the reasons why Mars is exalted in the sign of Capricorn, because Capricorn brings the wisdom, the strategy, the long view. So all of this feels like it's a precursor to the beginning of a hero's journey, where we're all called on to start being the hero in all sorts of small ways, not in the ways that our ego tells us that we should be. How many stories have you ever read based on the hero's journey? And that's like pretty much most of them. Where the hero has principles, where the hero has something that they deeply, deeply believe in, and even when everybody around them tells them that they're wrong, they have the courage to stick fast to those principles. What you never see, I can't think really of any examples that I could bring to mind of this, was where people being heroic was doing what they were fucking told by the group around them. You can't even call it anti-heroic, because anti-hero now has a whole fucking meaning of its own, right, as a concept, as a literary concept. It starts in little ways, but the consequences, the impact is huge. I would rather sit in a room full of heretics than a room of people who all agree and all police each other to make sure that they continue to agree. Because at the very least, in a room full of heretics, there would be an underlying respect for somebody who holds a different position. There's something quite testing about this, but I think, as I've been saying in the weekly energy readings, it's getting easier to see your people. Why? I think it's because your people, whoever they may be, are not the ones who are moving in a homogenous, self-policing mass, but they're the ones actually who are standing apart and going, oh, I don't really agree, actually. I've thought about it. I've tested my paradigm and it doesn't really stand up to scrutiny. I've tested my belief system and it doesn't really stand up to scrutiny. So now, I've had to dig in and I've found something else that sits there, and it's always been there, but I've ignored it. But now I'm going to make it important. I'm going to hold it front and centre. That's why it's easier to see these people. And this would explain why the Eight of Pentacles is there, because this is not a comfortable transition. For those who choose to adopt it, it is not a comfortable transition. To be fair, even for those who are resisting, I don't think it's going to be comfortable, because they're going to have to really dig to find justified reasons for resisting change. But I think in these people you are going to see the lower expressions of Mars. Hostile, aggressive, closed. And possibly whilst preaching progress. What I would say to you is that you are not alone. You're moving away from, the group, but there are other groups of people who will respect your principles. They'll respect what you stand for. And maybe here's the point where, the balance tips enough that we can really start to see each other. Good Lord, I've been prattling on for nearly an hour. There is no inherent virtue in doing what everybody else does and thinking what everybody else thinks. Because your desire to be part of something overrides your ability to think and your ability to consider what is important. There's no virtue there, none. And anybody who tells you different is wrong, in my opinion. It certainly doesn't make heroes. So I'm going to leave you with that thought and take myself away. Keep an eye out for the monthly videos, because they will be coming along for each of the signs very, very soon. And if you are interested in participating in the Deccan Walk, or coming to see all of the extended content for all of the signs and all that kind of thing, link for Circle will be in the description box below. I'm not exaggerating when I'm saying this Deccan Walk is changing lives. It's happening right in front of us, and it's the most beautiful thing. It's a group collaboration, but it is also a deeply, deeply personal journey. And what I like about what we've got over there in circle is that we can hold both. So, I'm going to leave it here. Know that I love you all very, very much. I'll see you soon.